Saints fans and Houdans from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley with the Bayou Blitz. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Bob Rose. What's happening, Bob?
Not a lot, my friend, Mr. Kyle. We would like to thank all fans of the New Orleans Saints, fans of the NFL, and as always, fans of the Bayou Blitz for having us into your home and over your airwaves. I hope all of you are doing well out there. The onset of spring is upon us. And Kyle, you know what that means. It's the start of, forget January 1st. The start of 2020 starts when NFL season officially begins, and we are just 1 week away from that.
Yeah, 1 week from the NFL period, as well as the tampering period. I think
the legal tampering period, whatever that means.
Period, right? But we shall see exactly what's going to happen, especially with our beloved New Orleans Saints. But tonight, guys, we have a treat for you. We have a special guest on the air. Man, this gentleman not only is one of the more inspirational people in the world, but he's also our boss. So we have Mr. Mark Pattison, former New Orleans Saint himself, as well as a Raider. And also, man, Mark, he is well known in the world for climbing the 7 summits of the world. So Mark is now serving as the Senior VP of Business Development for Sports Illustrated in Maven. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you, guys. That was a great intro. I appreciate it. And, the Bayou Blitz, man, am I honored and blessed to be on your show. Bobby Hebert, I was on his radio show the other day, and it was just awesome to talk New Orleans Saints football, a blast from the past, all of our teammates like Morten, Andersen, or that amazing linebacker crew and everybody else. And it's really fantastic to speak with you guys tonight.
Well, look, I am honored that you have graced us with your appearance, but also, man, guys, you have to listen to some of the great things that Mark has been a part of. Also, you need to listen to how he prepares for those summit climbs, and that's what I'm really interested in hearing, as well as what is in store for the Sports Illustrated brand. And Mark has some good things that he would like to share with us there as well. Bob, let me turn it over to you.
Well, again, Mark, I would like to echo Kyle's sentiment. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're a busy man, not only throughout our network, but throughout New Orleans Saints Nation and Sports Illustrated in general. Look, we have plenty of time to talk football. I'm a big mountain fan myself, and just reading and listening to your stories about mountain climbing is just so ultra impressive to me. But is that something that you were interested in from the time you were really young? Has it always been a passion?
Yeah. So just to kind of reset this for the audience, Kyle had talked about the 7 summits. So those are the 7 highest peaks on each continent, and I've done 6 of the 7. We're talking today on March 10th, and we're talking about leaving on March 31st, headed towards Nepal. Today,
wow.
The Chinese government actually shut down the Tibet side, which is from the north. So you cannot, if you had made plans to go climb Everest, coming from the north through Tibet, a little bit different climb, you can no longer do that. I've got my fingers crossed right now that the Nepalese side, which is known as the south side, will not close down. And so right now, everything's on track and on target to make that happen. Now, to your question, Bob, so I grew up in Seattle. Seattle has got mountains surrounding on all corners, from the east and the west. If you've ever been there, we have kind of the crown jewel mountain called Mount Rainier. It's 14,500 feet,
right.
Which is about 14,500 feet higher than any highest point in Louisiana, right? So that's just what it is. And so, I think a lot of times you're a product of your environment. And so from my standpoint, growing up there, I did a lot of hiking around the local mountains and the Cascades and Olympics, and then I've climbed Mount Rainier a few times, and there's a lot of famous mountaineers that came out of the state of Washington, the Whitakers. Actually, there's a guy named Jim Whitaker, who was the first American in 1960 to climb Mount Everest, which was pretty cool. And then he later started REI. And then there's other guys like Ed Viesters who have set records climbing mountains all over the world with no oxygen and things like that. So I've read all these books and big fan of the mountains. And then about 9 years ago, I kind of had a bump in my life. But you know what? We all have a bump. And the way I dealt with it was to put a big ass goal out there. And for me, that was trying to become the first NFL player to ever climb the 7 summits. No guy had ever done it, and I wanted to be that person. And really what it was is for me to immerse myself into the mountains, get lost in nature, put something out there which helped me pull me out of the spot I was in at the time, and give me clarity on the direction of my life and where I wanted to go. And that's really what was happening. And, after about Mountain 4 years ago, I was down in Argentina, a mountain called Aconcagua, about 23,000 feet. And excuse me. And, I'd kind of gone through the rough patch. I was kind of on my way, and I kind of felt like I had momentum. And I was like, you know what? I only got 3 more of these suckers to go. They're hard, but I seem to have an aptitude for being high in the mountains. And, let's start broadcasting. I started a podcast like you guys have. Started broadcasting it socially. And the weird thing is my whole NFL experience, and I'm talking about now from the actual NFL, the Players Association, that became relevant again in what I'm doing today.
How so? Do you just, and I know you've gotten other former NFL players, involved in your nature aspects. But how has your show and your achievements managed to tie the two together?
Well, I mean, one thing is that, I was just, I was very fortunate to play 5 years in the NFL, and I passed through a couple of years down in New Orleans. I love my time there. But at the end of the day, like every level, there are players that are great going to the Hall of Fame. And I was just a good team member that participated, and, I made the cut. And at the end of the day, you're either there or you're not. And so I'm still part of the club. But, when I opened up my social and started to gain followers and all that stuff, and now it's over 400,000. I had people like the Chris Long, who's the son of Howie Long, who when he was playing at the time for the Patriots, I got a call from him and said, "Hey Mark, I love what you're doing. I'd love for you to join this organization that I have called Water Boys, and that is to raise money to build water wells for the people of the Maasai tribe." And so I got together. I actually recruited Jim Mora Jr. A lot of fans down there in New Orleans would know that name. To come along and partner with me on that project. There was about 10 of us, but he and I banded together, raised $47,000. We're the only ones that actually built our own water well, and went down, visited the people in these different tribes, saw how they lived. It was an absolute blessing. And then went and climbed Kilimanjaro. That was my second time actually climbing Kilimanjaro. Wow. Along with these other NFL players. And so that was an example of not only showing me the path of raising money and helping others, but banding together with other NFL players. I'm actually on the NFL Legends podcast at the end of this month. And then the NFL will be doing a lot of social tweets and everything else from the top of the mountain, or not just the top, but also from base camp at 17,500 feet. So it's just fun to be back in the conversation and relive some of these stories and connect with people like Bobby Hebert, which I did last week.
Man, that's pretty impressive.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was just saying it's pretty impressive. But Mark, you have also thrown out a wide net to other sports figures as well. I was reading a lot and listening to a couple of the podcasts. You had Floyd Andersen as one of your guests, the former Tour de France winner. And it's just amazing what you have been able to accomplish. One of the things that most NFL players have a difficult time doing is making that transition, right? And not only have you made a transition, and you had, like you said, you had a point where it's a little rough patch in life, but you have been able to receive some clarity, and you're doing so many other productive things in your life. What has given you that, how do I say it, the the fortitude to be able to push on and also prepare for such climbs like Everest? Because I know you had to do a lot of preparation in order to get to that level, and also being able to run businesses at the same time.
Yeah, Kyle, that is just a great question. And I think what you have to have more than anything is discipline and commitment to excellence on what you're trying to do, right? And for me, I stay committed to the end goal. So the first thing I like to do is I like to write what I'm doing and trying to accomplish down. And really, there are multiple channels that I'm going, and each one I go full bore at. Essentially, what I've done is I've taken that same energy that I had when I was playing football and preparing for the camps, going down. We were practicing. We used to practice in La Crosse, Wisconsin, during 2-a-days, and it was a whole different grind than what these guys do today. And in order to get there, and I was not a tier one guy, so I was fighting and scratching and clawing my way. And I had a certain rhythm and discipline that I knew if I did X, Y, and Z, I'd put myself in the best possible position to actually make the team, not only with New Orleans but also with the Raiders. Mm-hmm. And so, essentially, I've got 4, different things that occupy my time. One are my podcast, and the hard thing, as with podcasts, is trying to schedule people out, and just like you and I were doing earlier today, with hey, time zones, and is it this time or that time, and can you move it 10 minutes and all this stuff. And when you're kind of a one-man show, it's hard to do, but I'm committed to the cause, because the name of my podcast is called Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much what I have to say, it's about listening to these inspirational stories like Floyd Landis, who was absolutely dethroned for doping after winning the Tour de France. Mm-hmm. And then this free fall tumble into drugs and alcohol and all this other stuff that he had to go through. Now he's pulled himself back out of it. Last week I had Matt Millen, former Raider great, on the podcast. Former teammate of mine. He almost died. He had a heart condition where his heart literally, there's a condition that shrunk his capacity, that it was only running at 30%. And so he literally had to go in the hospital and waited it out for over 100 days until somebody else died. They plucked his heart out and put it inside Matt. This week I've got Ronnie a lot. And so the stories just keep coming. I'm like, you got to be kidding. The second thing that I focus on, obviously, is my job at Sports Illustrated. We started this company 3 years ago in Seattle, Washington. There was only 18 of us at the time. Now there's over 450 employees with Maven. Maven is a company that not only runs Sports Illustrated, but also we serve as the back-end technology for that company. And then there's many other brands like The Street, the Biography Channel, History Channel, Maxim Magazine, and many others that we are literally the technology behind what those companies do. Sports Illustrated is a little bit different because, Kyle, as you guys know, we are out there and actually hiring guys like yourself to be the boots on the ground expert journalist in market. And we can get into that a little bit later. But then there's the my training around Mount Everest. I get up early in the morning. I go do CrossFit for an hour, and then I work my Sports Illustrated job during the day. And then at the very end of the day, I run up the mountain. Another thing, going back to that word commitment, is that I moved my life from California, Southern California, to Sun Valley, Idaho. I train at 6,000 feet. You've seen these old like Rocky movies where they're out there. And you have to take on Clubber Lane or something like that, and that's like my Mount Everest. And it's going to do everything it can to possibly beat me down. And the odds against me actually making this thing happen, I know are stacked against me, but I'm trying to look at it a little bit differently. It's like, what can I do to put myself in the best possible position to succeed and make that? And in the last probably 4 months, when you take all the times I've gone up and down the mountain, I actually ski up the mountain. Most people ski down. I ski up the mountain.
Wow.
I've gone over 150,000 vertical feet in the last 3 months. And I've done that because, again, I've committed myself to the cause. So it just stretches my day more, because when I get back, then I got to get on the phone and schedule appointments and everything else with Sports Illustrated. But then the last part of this whole thing is going back to what it has done in terms of things becoming full circle. My daughter has epilepsy, and I created this event called Amelia's Everest. And so I threw this big event in Sun Valley, Idaho. I had a lot of famous guys and girls come up and create this. It was a sold out event, and we actually raised the money. I was trying to raise $29,029, which represents the height of Mount Everest, and the whole thing was bring awareness and money to the National Epilepsy Foundation. So one day she and other people like her will be cured. And we've screamed past $29,000, and you know, so it's wonderful that we're still working on that. But you know, that was another goal that, you know, just took a lot of time. And again, I really had to like put that in its own little place and go after it when I allotted a certain time during the day or the weekends to make that happen.
Wow, that's awesome. Awesome.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, Kyle and I are honored to be joined by Mark Pattison, former Washington Husky Hall of Famer and NFL wide receiver for the Raiders, Rams, and our New Orleans Saints. Sports Illustrated's Vice President of Business Development and the first NFL player to climb these 7 summits.
Well,
Mark,
6. He corrected us. 6 summits, right? You're going.
Yeah, that is true. I say 7 is about to be checked off.
Yeah, well, we're going after that, and you know, I'm really hopeful that I can attack that. I mean, it's just there's a lot of things, you know. Like I said earlier, you know, the coronavirus, which is going on right now, just shut down the northern side of Tibet, and so I'm hoping, you know, fingers and toes crossed, that the same is not going to happen on the south, which is going through Nepal. And I hope that's, you know, we're going to be okay with that. I'm not fearful of that at all, but you never know the way the governments react and what's going on here in the United States.
Mark, what has been your toughest climb to date?
Yeah, my toughest climb by far has been on Denali. Denali is up in Alaska. It's just under 21,000 feet. And the reason why that's such a tough mountain is because there's a lot of logistical challenges to it. You actually fly in a little plane and land on the ice, on the glacier. And then you have to carry, if you can imagine this, you have to carry 137 pounds up this flipping mountain. It's steep as possibly can be. You're navigating your way through all these crevasse fields, avalanche coming down left and right on either side. Then these steep walls that you have to go up and overcome. The first year, 2017, when I was up there, I did not make it. We got to 14,000 feet. There's a camp up there, and it was minus 40 every single night, snowing like crazy. Oh. And the top was minus 80, and for sure would not have come back with my fingers and toes if I would taken that on. Oh. And so we had, after 3 weeks of going through this and waiting, playing the weight game, we finally packed it in. We went back down. And so last year, 2 years ago now, I guess, in June of 2018, I went back. I went through the whole same routine, but this time we had safe passage. You know, it's still cold, as you can imagine. All that cold air blasting off the Barents Sea up there off the coast of Alaska, and it just is very unpredictable. But you know, we had a great weather window. We got up there, we take the top, we got back, we got out of there, and then there's a huge snowstorm, and all these people didn't make it. So I mean, I feel so blessed to say that I made it, that I never have to go back and try it again.
Wow. Now, you said you've been to Kilimanjaro a couple of times. Any summit after Everest that you plan to go back and attack?
Yeah, not the same one. You know, once those are done, I mean, never say never. I learned that a while ago, never say never. But, you know, there's so many other things that I would love to do. I'm talking about going around, hopping in a Sprinter van and climbing the highest peak in every state with my girlfriend. She's awesome, and she loves the outdoors. And, I mean, what a better way to see all 50 states. Now, as it turns out, I've happened to have done the 4 hardest ones. I've done Mount Rainier out of Washington. I've done Denali, which we just talked about. I've done Mount Whitney, which is tough in California. And I've done a mountain called Bora in the state of Idaho. So, I know there's some other ones that are difficult in Colorado and Utah, but once I get to the south, I think you're driving by, opening up the door, tap your toe, close the door, and you're on to Mississippi, right?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. And I said, what's high in Louisiana? Probably one of the levees in New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting, man. Look, Mark, as far as this virus, the coronavirus, and how this has already affected the sports world, right? How do you see this possibly playing out in the United States at this time?
One thing I like, if there's a doctor that is listening to this pod right now, I'm sure they're going to have a completely different opinion than myself. But I just learned a long time ago, and this is actually going through the fear game, is to do just the opposite. And rather than have fear, which it's creating what you're seeing today, which is panic, and everybody's staying inside. I have chosen to go just the complete opposite and attack and step into it. So what does that mean? Does that mean I'm going out and wiping my face and blowing my nose and handshaking people? No. I'm being super cautious, in terms of the way that's playing out, and I think it's probably the right thing to do to, shut down a lot of these different events just because you don't know. But at the end of the day, 400,000 people a year die of the common flu, right? And we don't have a panic around that. Breaking it down to the U.S., there's 50,000 people that have the flu that die from it every year. We've not found a cure for that. As we kind of enter this whole new phase of what this coronavirus can do, if you take a look at the percentages of people dying, it's not that high, one. Number two is while people are getting affected, or the people that have been infected, many of those people are recovering. And it seems like the only place that it is in a mission critical phase are people who are older and have some kind of chronic condition as we speak today. So my daughter, for example, flew today from LA to New York, and she said there was nobody on the plane. There's already been half the today, as we talked about earlier, the Chinese government shut down the Tibet side, so now half the amount of people that were going to go to Everest are not going. And so the way I look at it is, work out like a mother, like I've been doing for the last 30 years, preparing for this moment. Create that natural force field around me. When I wake up after I work out I do my CrossFit every morning, I come back and I have my 7 Summit smoothie, and I just make sure that between my food, my drink, my workout habits, everything else, I'm just keeping my body in optimal condition, so that when these viruses and everything else come and hit, that I can just, like, again, the force field of pushing these things back out. And so, where's all this going? I don't know, man. And I hope that at some point in time, that people stop reacting to fear, which is creating panic, which is creating people going to Target and Costco and buying all the toilet paper and hand sanitizer and all that kind of stuff, out, and just relax and just like, it's going to be okay. We just need to ride this thing out.
Definitely. It's interesting because on yesterday I went to Kroger's, and maybe it's me just being Mr. Positive here. I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to shop and get some groceries. And I'm looking at all of the disinfectant just gone, just obliterated. It's nothing on the shelf at all. And then I did see some toilet paper. I was surprised to see that. But it the fear has really captured most of America. And now it's affecting how the fans will possibly not be able to interact, especially with March Madness, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
going forward, I, and especially you have the Olympics coming up, the Olympic trials are going to occur. And I know Italy decided not to have people in the stands during their trials because they're being hit pretty hard in the country. Do we get to a point, possibly in a few months, where the fear subsides and we're back to normal, or we still have some caution there? What's your opinion?
Look, I think history always repeats itself, right? And it was interesting. I saw, maybe it was 60 Minutes or it was Sunday Morning or something, but it was one of these news shows, and it was talking about, the plague and the virus, and way back in history where they didn't even have the right kind of vaccines, or they didn't know what to do about it. And these things throughout history have hit us several times,
Hmm.
and in each time they've always passed. And
Hmm.
I think this too will pass in time. We're obviously we're all hoping for a vaccine. I know Congress has passed a 8 billion something, trillion. I mean, it's just insane number to help, provide the resources behind trying to knock this thing out. And fingers crossed to do that. That's not days and months. I'm sure that's either years or never. But the bottom line, we're trying to attack this whole thing. And I just think at the end of the day, again, at some point when it starts to like level out a little bit and stabilize, they're going to relax some of these rules, and people are going to come back into the markets and go into the grocery stores and resume the normal habits that they've had.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, we talked about some serious stuff. Mark, let's talk about some fun stuff. I know Bob, you wanted to talk to him about the Saints in his NFL career. Go for it.
Yeah. First of all, Mark, you were part of a history-making Saints team, the first New Orleans team to ever finish the season with a winning record, and of course go to the playoffs. That was, as you know, 1987. With Jim Mora, that Dome Patrol, Bobby Hebert, and all those weapons on offense. Tell us about what the culture and atmosphere was like, not only around the city itself, but what the demeanor of those veterans inside that locker room that were just so used to so many years of losing, what they were like.
Well, I got to tell you, yeah, no, I want to answer your question, but to answer your question, I need to go back a couple of years to put my answer into perspective. Okay,
Okay.
so I went to the University of Washington in 1980. I left there in 1985. I went to 2 Rose Bowls. We had 2 years where we were supposed to go to the Rose Bowl. We just had to knock out our rival, Washington State. We got beat by them. And we ended up in the Aloha Bowl, but we had a very successful season. And then my senior year, we ended up going to the Aloha Bowl. Then I ended up the Orange Bowl. But then I get drafted by the Raiders, go down there, have an amazing run. Jim Plunkett, Marcus Allen, Matt Millen, Howie Long, Lester Hayes, all these NFL greats. And we end up going to the playoffs. We're beat in the first round by the New England Patriots. But the bottom line is that I'd always been in a culture through Little League, through high school, through college, the NFL, initially of being in a winning culture. And so I'd never been around losing. I didn't know what that was all about. I had a winning mentality. And so now my 3rd year going into the NFL, I make the Raider team, and 2 days before the first game, I get traded to New Orleans, right? So I come down there, and we're playing the Cleveland Browns. Bernie Kosar was the quarterback, and the team goes out there. So I didn't know any of the guys at all. I didn't know anybody, and so I'm out there on the sidelines, and we go out there and we beat them. And so now we come back in the locker room, and I can't even tell, like the whole locker room, there's grown men, these stud football players, the leaders of the team. Half of these guys were in there crying. And I didn't understand it because I hadn't felt the pain of 20 years of losing with people with bags over their head
Right.
called the Aints, and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, it looked like there was this little thing called hope that maybe there's a culture, maybe Jim Moore is turning this thing around, maybe we have the right players, and then we go out and we knock off the Cleveland Browns. And in those days, they were pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really the first, and then we went the second and the third. And I think we went something like 13-3 or 13-2 or 12-3 or some, it was crazy how far we went. And I think at the very end, we lost to Minnesota in the first round, wild card game. And I think Jim Mora had been grinding the team so hard because he needed to take these guys from a losing culture into a winning culture, which he did, but he didn't let up, I think, down the home stretch in December when all the guys really needed that rest, to get, not rest, like take the day off, but, rather than go hardcore and pads and, running and all this kind of stuff, just to lay off. So to kind of rejuvenate a lot of the guys. And I think that's we just ran out of gas, but just being part of that and then going out. But the guy I hung out with mostly was Morten Andersen. And, I'd never been around a player on any team where the kicker was the star. He was like the Marcus Allen.
Yeah.
And we go out and he was famous in town and everybody knew him. He was a Hall of Famer. I mean, it's an amazing career, amazing guy. And it was so much fun to be around that. And I can't tell you, I don't think I paid for a drink or a meal. We go into our Drag Cafe or these other places, and it was like, you're a Saint, you're getting a free meal. I'm like, I'm down with that. So it was a lot of fun.
Tell us about some of your best NFL memories, be it with the Saints or Raiders.
Yeah, I think like that season as a whole was just a phenomenal, just a memory because again, it was incredible to see a city get behind a team. It was a little bit like a couple of years ago when the Chicago Cubs went to the World Series, and they hadn't been to the World Series in like 100 years or something,
right?
And the whole town just went berserk. Everybody was showing up, and there was this this force that you just could not stop. It was just this momentum, and momentum gets momentum, and that's what happened on that team in that year. And then we continued to carry it over into the next year. But I can remember some of the fonder memories weren't so much anything that I did, but I grew up as a little kid like everybody, dreaming one day to play in the NFL, and then somehow or another I put myself in that position, and then I'm one of those guys. And so to play San Francisco every year, and to go into Candlestick, which is no longer there, but the old Candlestick, and to play against Joe Montana, and to be and Ronnie Lott going across the middle, that was a lot of fun getting hit by him. And Jerry Rice and those types of guys, and then going out to the LA Rams and all these other teams that had these famous quarterbacks, receivers, defensive players. I mean, it was just like literally a dream come true. Out of the Raiders, just being in the huddle with some of those guys I talked about, Marcus Allen, Jim Plunkett, Cliff Branch, break the line of scrimmage, Lester Hayes, Mike Haynes, Lyle Alzado, Howie Long, all these guys, and then go out and hang out with them. It was just an incredible memory that I'll always have and keep, and I'm so fortunate to be able to have experienced that.
It's cool stuff. Great names there, man. Great names.
Yeah.
Did you play with Quinn Early in New Orleans?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not. No.
All right. Yeah, Quinn's a great friend of ours. He's been on podcasts a number of times. Jim Everett, did you play with him?
I did. I had a short stint with the Rams, but I played against Jim. I know Jim, and it was funny because the real only memory I have of Jim Everett, and he was a good player. He came out of Purdue, I believe, highly ranked, and he had a decent run. They had Eric Dickerson back in the day, but I just remember he started to get a pretty bad reputation because he was always throwing off his back foot, and then so he goes on the Jim Rome show.
Yeah.
And Jim Rome keeps calling him Chrissy, right? Chrissy Everett. And Jim, look, Jim, like he should have done was like, hey, I'm telling you, don't say that again, or else.
Yeah.
And Rome just kept pushing it. The next thing, the whole set explodes and, made crazy news. And I don't know if Jim Rome regrets that moment or not, but, Jim Everett certainly had all the right to do what he did.
I think it helped his career, to be honest with you.
Right.
Let's be honest. Yeah, Jim has been with us a number of times as well.
Good friend of ours.
And by the way, great guy. I really like Jim.
Yeah.
Good. Now, you talked some good names out there. Marcus Allen, you had an opportunity to play with him. And, in my opinion, he's one of the best running backs of all time, right? But a name that you did mention was Jim Plunkett. And he was one of my favorite quarterbacks growing up. 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
But I don't think he ever gets the just due that he deserves. And why do you believe that is? I just want your opinion.
No, well, I wanted to let's go back to your previous question, which is about some of these guys that I got to play with, which was just amazing. And when in your life or how often? Well, number one, just to make the NFL, and again, I was just a guy that was lucky enough to be there. But when I was in that position and called them teammates, and these guys, Marcus won the Heisman Trophy. Jim Plunkett won the Heisman Trophy. Marcus was Super Bowl MVP. Jim Plunkett was Super Bowl MVP. Jim Plunkett was Rookie of the Year. I don't think Marcus Allen was, but to have the trifecta and then all these Pro Bowls between the two of them and be on the same team was just like, you got to be kidding. And to see that kind of talent and that kind of dedication and commitment to, as Al Davis would say, excellence. I believe I do agree with you, Kyle, in what you're saying. Just because Jim Plunkett, he didn't drop back and he, pretty, and he didn't run the ball well, and he didn't have a great looking throwing motion. All those different things, like you see some of these quarterbacks today. Even Tom Brady, Tom Brady is not a quick guy or fast guy, but he reads the defense really well. Yeah, but he's got a beautiful throwing motion. And Plunkett just, the ball is kind of coming off the side of his arm and kind of this wobbly, thing that would come in. But he would throw the ball and he would complete it. He just had that confidence that really the receivers could believe in, that he was the guy. We also had a guy on the team, another really super nice guy, Mark Wilson, all-world player out of BYU, and he looked better. He looked the part. He was tall. He had a whip. He had a gun. He'd throw the same ball and he'd get intercepted, and Jim would throw it and bounce off three guys' head, and somebody would catch it. It was crazy.
Yeah, but Jim was a good guy. I mean, when you think about guys who are leaders, and he exemplified what it was to be an NFL quarterback at this time, not being honored in the Hall of Fame. I think it's not a good move on the Hall of Fame voters' part, but I know they have a tough job, but it's just my opinion. I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Let me ask you this, man. You spent some time in New Orleans, and it sounded like you had great time with Morten Andersen, right? Were there any time, how do I say this? Did you have any difficulties with Mr. Jim Mora or anyone else on the team?
Not really. I mean, I just like, it's kind of like transcending what I do today. When I showed up, I always knew my play. I think this is one of the reasons why I made the team. I was very dependable. I think there's a lot of guys that were probably better athletes. They were faster. I could catch the ball as well as anybody, but there's a lot of guys who can do that. But what these NFL GMs in those days it was Jim Finks and Jim Moore. They knew that they could count on me. They knew that I'd run my play, whatever I was asked to do, I did. And there's a lot of value with people. Anybody who's out there that's listening, you're trying to make an NFL team, or just every day just doing your job. When you do it to the fullest of your abilities and then go beyond. It's just hard to ignore that.
Definitely.
Mark, I'm curious about something too. When you were entering the NFL, a number of players coming out of college also had the opportunity to join the USFL around that same time period. And, the USFL threw a ton of money at some big names, Doug Flutie, Herschel Walker, Mike Rozier, a couple others. And, obviously the USFL had a different business model strategy than what the XFL has going on right now. But did you find yourself torn between an opportunity to live out a lifelong dream and have a shot at the NFL? Or did you have any pause in thinking to yourself, maybe I'll give one of these teams in the USFL a shot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I came, again, let's go back to my senior year. We ended up going to the Orange Bowl, first Pac-10 team in those days to ever go to an Orange Bowl. We ended up beating Oklahoma. That was the Boz, that team. And so from there we move on. That's my last game. And then I'm gearing up to go to the combines, which again, it's just another progression in terms of how you get drafted in the NFL. And in about, I don't know, I can't remember exactly when it is, maybe right after the Orange Bowl in January or something, I end up getting notified that I've been drafted by the Portland Breakers. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, that was, like you said, a SFL team. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And so I had an agent at the time down in LA, and we started negotiating with them. And then a month later or something, I get drafted by the Raiders. And of course, I mean, who wouldn't want to be the Raiders? I was so jacked. They just come off the Super Bowl, 2 years before, and they had all these famous players on the team. And, really what happened is my agent, I mean, it's pennies today compared to what the salaries these guys are making and the kind of money that's being offered. But in those days, I got the highest signing bonus for any seventh rounder in the history of the game. Wow. Which was pretty cool. And it only happened because the Portland Breakers wanted me on their team.
Wow, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, as a businessman yourself, obviously nowadays, looking from afar at what the XFL's early business model appears to be anyway, do you think that league has a chance for some sustained success?
Well, that's interesting. I was having a conversation about this with my good buddy Jim Moore Jr. And it seems like they have a chance, and they have a chance because they've changed the rules and they've made it a little bit different. I think one of the things that could be a stick point, they don't have elite quarterback play right now. Now that may change over time, but that's going to be a stick point. And there's just always fan adoption. How are the fans going to stick to this? Now, what they have going for this is Oliver Luck, former NFL quarterback, smart guy. His son, obviously just retired from the Colts, but he seems to have really thought this thing through. He's got the right people behind him. And, unlike USFL, I think they were on the right path until Trump decided to go off the grid and create his own rules, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what sunk the league. They didn't stay disciplined to a pay structure. And so with this same type of deal, they're paying guys only so much money, and they need to stay disciplined behind it. Does the NFL get involved in what these guys are trying to do? I have no idea. Does it become a feeder league? Maybe. But, I think early returns, it's okay. And we'll just see how the product grows.
Yeah, definitely. I had the opportunity to cover the Houston Roughnecks this past weekend and experience it for myself, Mark. It's a different fan experience altogether. And one of the things that I think the XFL has prided itself on early on and concentrated on is how to get the fans interacting with the game, and they've done a great job. The one thing that, of course, all leagues are going to really have difficulty in doing is measuring up to the NFL, of course,
Yep.
especially at the talent level. There are some really, really good players out there. And I know when I was in Houston covering the game, the Seattle Seahawks were there scouting PJ Walker, the quarterback for the Houston Roughnecks. So
Yep.
there are teams out there looking, scouting, seeing if there are opportunities to be able to bring some of those guys and invite them into the camps, or to be able to get some contracts to some of those players as well. So, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if it can sustain without having some major backing from the NFL, but I like what I see thus far.
Yeah, actually, I'm not so concerned about that. I mean, you asked a certain question about the XFL, and what I'm really jacked up about is the potential of the new CBA from the NFL being signed. And I know there's some proposals going around right now, but the bottom line is that in the NFLPA, which is the National Football Players Association, there's a group of us that there's, I think, 4,800 players that they put in a certain box, and the guys today have pretty amazing benefits and obviously their salaries, but it's really the benefits. Yet what has been left behind are these, group of 4,800. I mean, there's great players in there, across the board that we just don't have the kind of benefits, the health benefits. There's been all this head injury, CTE stuff going around. And I think there's some huge progress that's being made, and I'm hoping that they can close the deal here pretty soon. I think it was rejected on its first round. They made some tweaks, and we can get that going. Because, look, for all the XFL guys and every single one of those guys, their dream is to play in the NFL. And for any NFL guy like myself is to make it to a point, 4 years in the NFL where you can now start to earn your pension, but have that worth something and recognize the guys who actually helped to build the game to what it is today.
Definitely.
Are you concerned? Some of the other, major networks, at least on TV, are starting to show some low-key concern that there might actually be a player stoppage after 2021. Do you see that being a concern, or do you think that the Players Association and the union and the league together are going to get this thing ironed out sooner rather than later?
I think it's going to be soon. I really do. I think it's really close. I think it's just some smaller bullet points. I think the majority of the players, and I think we only need to have 50% of the active players ratify the proposal, which includes the retired guys as well, although we don't have a seat at the table in terms of a vote. And I think that we're down to some minor points. I think there's some other guys, out there, some of the main quarterbacks that are speaking up because they don't want to play a 19th game. But, I don't know how that gets sorted out. But I hope it does, and I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker.
Okay.
As a retired player, is there a group or a faction of you guys that are taking a proactive approach and reaching out to maybe a few of the current players that you might have a relationship with to try to give some advice to them?
Yeah, so there's been there's a couple pretty active voices that are out there. John Riggins, the old Washington Redskin, I believe he might have even been the Super Bowl MVP back in the Theismann days.
Yeah.
He married this pit bull gal who is a lawyer out of Washington, D.C., and she has been on the warpath to try to get more benefits and be an advocate for the Players Association. And so they've, really rattled the cage. They brought in some pretty big name players, from the past to get up there and help beat the drum. and try to make sure that our voice is heard.
And I think that that's a great idea personally. You, Kyle, myself, I'm going to call us mature gentlemen because we're not old. But we were all in our mid-20s at some point at our athletic peak, or so we thought at the time. We thinking we're invincible. So we don't think ahead to those days. Then we don't think ahead to those days at 40, 45, when our career is over and we have just beaten our bodies to death. So I do think it's a great idea for a retired player, such as yourself, that had been through the battles and experienced life after football to kind of hopefully open the eyes of these current younger players.
Well, look, I mean, back in our day, I don't know what the gross revenue, what that product was, but I do know today it's like a $10 billion industry. I mean, it's just a Goliath sports business that all these owners are getting fat and happy over, and that's great. And the only thing that we're saying is, like, that's awesome, we love it, but let's just make sure that you haven't forgot about the guys, Jim Brown of the world, that left behind. I mean, there's some just awful stories about some of these older guys that their bodies are beat up, they've had all these head concussions. You've got the Junior Seau, suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that have gone sideways. Now, I would say this, that the NFL, compared to when I got done playing, which was when you're done, you kind of drive off a cliff, they've started this new thing called the Trust. And the Trust really has developed some amazing programs led by Tracy Perlman to really provide education post your career, what to do, how to deal with depression, some key opportunities to go and get physicals and things like that. So it's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than when I was playing.
Definitely. All right. I'm just going to say this one thing. I think you were always destined to be connected with New Orleans one way, shape, or form, because the Portland Breakers were the New Orleans Breakers, right? And I was there performing at halftime for those Breakers when they had their season in 1984 here in New Orleans.
Love that.
And then, of course, you were with the Saints, and now you are here over at Sports Illustrated. Now, tell the guys out there, the fans that we have, what to expect from the new brand of Sports Illustrated.
That is a great question. So just to set things up, we were in a position about 6 months ago to go and buy Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated has been bought and sold 3 times in the last 3 years. And the reason why that's been is because they haven't invested in technology. They've continued to run their business like they did back in 1954. And they haven't done any updates or anything as well to the magazine. So we've always known, the company is producing this amazing Sports Illustrated iconic magazine, but also on the digital side of just, again, having reporters in New York, we call them national reporters, reporting on things that are going around the country. And so when we came in, we did not win the bid. We lost the bid to a company called ABG, Authentic Brands Group, but we did turn around, and within 24 hours, we closed a deal to be the operators of Sports Illustrated, as well as being the technology behind it for the next 100 years. And what that allows us to do is to take this kind of national and localized concept that we came from. The founder of our company and my experience and some of the other guys that we recruited over all came over from scout.com, and before that it was rivals.com. So really focused on college sports, but the whole key around that business model was to have boots on the ground journalists that are going to the games, that form relationships with the general managers or the SIDs, the players, the coaches, and we don't have guys necessarily reporting from New York talking about what's going on in New Orleans. And so we put that business model together. We went and tied a deal together with ABG. And it's been remarkable what we've been able to do in just 4 short months. We've taken the company to heights they haven't seen in 15 years. We are setting records left and right in terms of the unique visitors that come and hit the site. The technology continues to improve in a lot of different ways. And we're doing everything we can to really empower the journalists like you, Kyle, that are there on scene, reporting and giving us the actual scoop, what's happening, breaking news, all those types of things. So it's just a lot of fun. And the final thing is that there has always been this separate line between the magazine and with Sports Illustrated, digital, sportsillustrated.com. And so what we are doing is we are blending those so there's not, those lines cross. And so what you'll get when you sign up for a premium membership is, and that means that you're paying $9 per month to get premium content, but with that content, you're going to get the magazine. You're also going to get sneak peeks at what's coming out in the magazine before it comes out by getting that premium product.
Good stuff. And also, Mark, some of the things about the innovations that you guys are bringing forth to be able to help the writers and the reporters are really great right now. But you have such a good, talented leadership team. Are there any names that we are aware of or that you want to make aware of to the audience about the team that you guys have assembled?
Well, look, these are all guys that have been in the digital space for the last 30 years. And so one of the reasons why we've been able to grow so quickly, we're approaching, as a whole company, we're approaching about 200 million unique visitors per month, which is insane. And we were able to do that and quickly put the team together because we're plucking guys out. It's really no different than the Saints team right now, where you have Sean Payton and you got Drew Brees, and you've got the best of the best coming together to create great synergy. You don't have Drew Brees is not coming straight out of Purdue in his first year. You've got a guy that's been in this business doing the same thing. Sean Payton has been in the NFL for a long time, and all these other players and general manager and everything, they've put together a great team. It's pretty much analogous to exactly what we've been able to do and why we've been able to hit the ground and run so fast. Now, I can tell you the first year and a half we were suck and win, but that's just all part of, going back to that question you asked me about 1987, prior to that 20 years of losing, and then they bring in the right people, the management, the right coaches, everything else. And then somehow or another you get a little momentum and then look out because everything is just going full steam ahead.
Awesome. Any last questions, Bob?
Yeah, Mark, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hopefully it will be the first time, but not the last. You were talking about your Finding Your Summit, the Finding Your Summit podcast that you're involved with, and Amelia's Everest, fundraiser. So if you don't mind, tell our fans and our listeners how they can track down both of those.
Yeah, well, I'll give you one step further. Thank you for that. The name of my website is Mark Pattison, Pattison, NFL.com. So Mark Pattison, NFL.com. I've also got a blog on there called Everest Blog, and on that blog, you will be able to follow me up the mountain. I'll be able to do real-time reporting from the mountain at 17,500. And then I also have a Garmin technology that you can actually see my steps as I make my move up the mountain. It's a long expedition. People are surprised when I tell them I will be on the mountain for 2 months. And so it's just a long mental and physical grind. But, again, you can find kind of what I'm doing as it relates to my podcast. They're all on there. And Amelia's Everest, if you're feeling generous, you want to donate towards that great cause. It's awesome. 100% of that money goes to the National Epilepsy Foundation. And then, of course, following the journey as this thing becomes essentially a reality TV show, is Mark going to make it or not? So I'm just as excited as anybody who might be paying attention.
Hey, man, we will be praying for you. I know you will achieve it. I know there are some conditions right now, we need to make sure you can get into the trek up Everest, but I'm pretty confident that you will find a way. Look, Mark, I really do appreciate you spending time with Bob and I, as well as the fans of the Bayou Blitz. And if there's anything else we could do to try to get you on board, or if there's any announcements, what have you, that you would like to put out there on behalf of Sports Illustrated, you are always welcome to be here.
I love that. I love that. I'll tell you what I'd love to do is come back and have a conversation with you guys after I get back from Everest in June.
That'll be awesome.
I'd make it a date. I would love to hear back from you.
Definitely.
Yep. Well, Kyle knows how to track me down anytime, so let's just make it happen.
Yes,
got it.
Look, I better pull your coattail before you leave. So anyway, this is a great time, and thank you so much for being here. Guys, that's Mark Pattison of Sports Illustrated, as well as the 7 Summits. Mark, congratulations. I'm going to say it ahead of time for you. Okay?
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
All right, Saints fans, that was a great broadcast, Bob. And tell us, there's anything else on your mind before we sign off?
Well, and yeah, as you know, Kyle, and maybe you and I could get together off air and schedule a quick free agency show, either late in the weekend or early next week, because we do have some exciting times. Mark outlined the upcoming CBA, which is pushed back the franchise tag deadlines and everything like that. But yeah, it seems to be like all systems are go, and getting ready for the 2020 season. And our pieces in Sports Illustrated, yours, mine, John's, the whole crew, we're going to be outlining, some free agency previews and predictions over the next handful of days. Outside of that, I agree with you. I mean, Mark, you and I already knew he is such an impressive individual. And, definitely in talking to him for the last, 40 or 50 minutes, the myth, the myth certainly lives up to the person. So we wish Mark the best of luck. Can't wait to talk to him again.
Yeah, the energy. Mark has a lot of energy and passion, and that's what really attracted me to have the Saints News Network on the Sports Illustrated side of the business. So, all right, guys, look, great show. We will have more free agency on the horizon for you guys. You do know that starting on March 18th, the new NFL season begins with free agency at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But did not know this, on the 16th, that Monday is really when the free tampering, so to speak, takes place, when agents are able to communicate with prospective teams as well. So definitely there's going to be a lot of buzz. The Saints have to be able to either keep a couple of guys, or we will see a lot of guys exit. So let's do this. This weekend sounds good. We could possibly have a free agent primers podcast on Saturday or Sunday evening for you guys before headed into the free agent period next week. Okay, don't forget, you can be able to find us online at si.com/NFL/Saints. And you can be able to check us out on social media at Saints News on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. Bob, tell everybody how they can find you on the World Wide Web.
Just like you said, Kyle, the easiest way to follow you and myself and the whole crew is just go to si.com. Track down New Orleans Saints, and give Kyle Mosley, Bob Rose, John Hendricks, give all of us a follow right down through. You'll be directly linked to our Sports Illustrated pieces and our Bayou Blitz shows. Obviously, we're going to have a little bit of a contest coming up too once we get past free agency and the draft. For those of you that are following us and that are getting involved on si.com, we're going to have a free giveaway. As soon as my tax return comes back, we'll figure out what that's going to be. But um, Individually, I may be followed on Facebook, Bob Rose, or Twitter at BobbyR2613. And obviously, we want you to be involved if you aren't already with our Bayou Blitz Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search Bayou Blitz. It'll pop right up. It's a large group. It is growing with all of our members very, very involved. It's such a fan-friendly group. We are truly all a family. So much good interaction. Sharing of articles, opinions, questions, and just so many helpful people on there. So if you are already a member, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And get your friends and family involved too, not only with the Bayou Blitz Facebook page, but funnel them over to si.com. I think we're a pretty welcoming group. We definitely suggest you give us your comments and opinions and encourage questions. That helps make our jobs easier. But thank you all for all the involvement you've had with us up to this point.
Yep. Definitely, Saints fans, do not forget Bob Rose, John Hendricks, Brendan Boylan, caller Antoine, Aaron Miller, as well as myself. And we have new partners that will be a part of us, but they won't be writing. They will share their podcast with us. Those guys over at Saints Stop with Stephen Bijou, as well as Tracy Bartholomew. Those guys will be affiliated with us, and we are partners in crime, so to speak. So
I've been on with them, Kyle. They put on a terrific show. I'm so thankful to have them involved. And if you guys are listening to us already, thank you for everything that you do, and welcome to the SI family.
Yeah, definitely. And man, guys, do not forget, we're going to have Mike Detillier. He will be giving us a NFL master class for the draft. So it's the NFL draft master class that he will put on, and we are going to schedule that. Let's see, I believe either the last week in March or the first week in April, so you guys can get your mock drafts ready and be able to listen to one of the best professionals in the game. And if you don't forget, go to MikeDetillier.com and get his NFL Draft Bible. All right, guys, it's been a good hour or more, and we spent it with Mark Pattison. Don't forget, you can check us out on saintspodcast.com, as well as you can check us out on Spotify, as well as on iTunes and Stitcher and what's the other, Tune Up and all these other ones, right? So we are there. So if you need to be able to check out our podcast, we covered the gamut. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Network with Mr. Bob Rose at Bayou Blitz. Bob, have a good evening.
You too, my friends.
All right, take care. Bye.